I would like to welcome everyone to today's hearings. The Committee of Adjustment is appointed by Council to consider applications for consents and minor variances to the zoning bylaw. Please be advised that any applicant or agent that is in attendance in person at today's hearing for a specific application may leave the hearing once their application has been considered by the committee. Any applicant, agent, or member of the public wishing to address the committee for a specific application is reminded that presentations are limited to 10 minutes per person. I should also add that our member, Councillor Strength, is joining us electronically today. Could I please have a motion to adopt today's agenda? Sims and Watson? I won't see Councillor Strength there. And would the Secretary Treasurer please read the resolution to adopt the agenda?
Moved by Member Sims, seconded by Member Watson. Be it resolved that the agenda of the Gravenhurst Committee of Adjustment meeting dated March 20th, 2026 be adopted.
And would we please vote on that? And that carries. Thank you. Do any committee members have any comments with regard to the minutes to be adopted today? No? Mr. Sims, go ahead.
I think a very minor one, but the signature page at the very end has Susan and as the Secretary Treasurer, and she wasn't in attendance. We missed you. And I don't know whether that's just a scratch out and you sign something.
Thank you for missing me. Even though I didn't attend the meeting, I still did prepare the minutes using YouTube. So I did prepare the minutes, so that's why it's my name. Thank you.
Okay. So did we have a motion? Yes. Did we have a motion?
Not yet.
Not yet. Could I have a motion to adopt the minutes? I'm sorry. Mr. Sims and Watson. And would the Secretary please read the resolution to adopt the minutes?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Moved by Member Sims, seconded by Member Watson. Be it resolved that the minutes of the Gravenhurst Committee of Adjustment meeting dated February 20th be adopted.
Thank you, and we'll call for the vote on that. And that carries. Thank you. Do any committee members have a pecuniary interest in the applications being heard today? And I see nothing. Okay. And in accordance with Section 11 of the Committee of Adjustment Procedural Bylaw, I'll now ask the Secretary Treasurer has received any requests for adjournment, deferral, or withdrawal from the applicant or agent for any application.
Mr. Chair, no such requests have been received.
Thank you. The Committee of Adjustment will today consider one consent application and two minor variance applications under public hearings. The Planning Act requires that a public hearing be held before the Committee of Adjustment decides whether or not to approve a consent or a minor variance. The public hearing serves two purposes. First, to present to the Committee of Adjustment and the public the details and background to the application, and second, to receive comments from the public and agencies before a decision is made. I will briefly summarize the procedure to be used for the hearing. The Secretary Treasurer, Adam Ager, will advise as to when, how, and to whom notice of the public hearing was circulated. The planners, Angela Jakatis or Andrew Clark, will provide any other information that is relevant to the application and summarize any correspondence on file. From there, the applicant will be provided the opportunity to make a presentation, followed by questions or presentations from the public, either in favor of or against the proposal. Committee members will then have the opportunity to question the applicant, the Secretary Treasurer, the planners, or anyone giving presentations. The proposed consent or variance will then be considered by the committee. If anyone from the public would like to receive a copy of the decision made on any application, please provide your name and full mailing address on one of the forms provided on the table at the back of the room. Would the Secretary Treasurer please advise how, when, and to whom notices of the public hearings were circulated?
Notice of the public hearings concerning the proposed applications were sent by first-class mail to the respective owners and assessed persons within 60 meters of the properties subject to the proposed consent or minor variance application and emailed to applicable agencies. Included with each notice was a summary of the application, a site sketch, and a key map showing the location of the property. The circulations were provided in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, Chapter P13.
Thank you. It is important to note that should committee approve any application, there is a 20-day appeal period, during which time today's decision may be appealed. During this appeal period, no building permit may be issued or other work commenced. Also, in the event there is an appeal, and in order to be kept advised of a possible Ontario Land Tribunal hearing, members of the public must request to be sent a copy of committee's decision on the application. Third-party appeals are no longer accepted. Only the applicant, the municipality, and certain public bodies will be able to appeal a minor variance or consent decision. We will now deal with the application for consent. And I now declare this to be a public hearing for application B01-2026 for Cook. I will now ask the Senior Planner, Angela Jakatis, to please provide any additional information that may be relevant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The subject property is located in the northeast section of the municipality, adjacent to the boundary with the town of Bracebridge. The property fronts onto Doe Lake Road. It's designated rural area in the official plan. As you can see on this map, surrounding lots are generally large. The other thing I would point out on this map is the town-owned road allowance running through the property shown in white, and that's a critical part of this application. The property is zoned rural and environmental protection in recognition of wetlands, as can be seen in this air photo. Surrounding uses include residential, some small farms, but primarily forested and natural areas similar to this property. You can just barely see in the central east part of the photo, that there are some existing buildings on the property. The proposal is to sever to create one new vacant lot for a total of 2 lots. Again, you can see the town-owned road allowance in this sketch, which results in the retained lot being comprised of 2 separate parcels. The applicant has therefore submitted a zoning amendment, which will recognize those 2 parcels as 1 lot for planning purposes, which is required to ensure that frontage requirements are met. I would also point out on this sketch, the existing access road, which is on the road allowance, it's depicted by a dashed line on the sketch. Comments of no objection were received from the town's chief building official, deputy fire chief, deputy treasurer, parks and trails technician, and Bell Canada. The town's infrastructure technologist has commented that an access agreement is required to allow for the continued use of the constructed road on the road allowance, and that an engineered design, condition assessment, and sizing of the existing culvert must be provided. Further, if a professional engineer determines that the existing culvert is not adequately sized or is in disrepair, there must be a culvert replacement that is designed by a professional engineer and installed to the satisfaction of the infrastructure department. All of this would be at the applicant's cost. Alternatively, the applicant could purchase that portion of the road allowance that is used for access. And the related infrastructure requests are included in the conditions that have been included as part of the recommendation. Finally, for comments, the District of Muskoka has no objection, subject to entrance permits from Doe Lake Road, a 3-meter wide road widening to be dedicated to the district. And I would note that the survey has already accounted for that, the plan that's on the screen. The district also is requesting an agreement regarding the location of wells in relation to the road. So these 3 matters have been incorporated into the recommended conditions. And I would note that district also made comments about natural features on the property, which will be discussed later in the presentation. So just going through some photos. This is taken while standing on the town-owned road allowance at the entrance to the property of the access road, looking east on Doe Lake Road across the frontage of the retained lot. And then turning and looking west on Doe Lake Road across the frontage of the severed lot, you can see that the road is straight in this area, appropriate for a new entrance. The resulting lots will be large, in conformity with the official plan criteria for new lot creation and in character with the surrounding rural area. So this is then turning and moving into the property on the access road across the road allowance. The property is heavily treed. You'll continue to see that in the rest of the photos. And then just moving further into the retained lot where the access road leaves the town road allowance and runs south on the retained lot. Would note that there are numerous septic and building areas on the property. And just moving further in on the retained lot, they're looking towards the existing structures. There isn't a dwelling, but there are structures related to resource use, such as maple syrup making, as is permitted in the rural zone. Then going back out the access road, the severed lot is on the left. As described in the staff report, this entire property is identified as being part of a much larger deer wintering area. And the official plan policies stipulate that when a lot is being created within a deer wintering area, there needs to be an environmental impact study completed in order to avoid areas of conifer thermal cover and associated deciduous browse, as well as the official plan stipulates that a site plan agreement be required to maintain vegetation, and all of that is addressed in the recommended conditions. And I would also point out on this photo just the lower elevation, which is where the culvert comes through under the access road that's been referenced by infrastructure. So then moving and standing on that access road above where that culvert would be draining from Doe Lake Road southwest towards the wetlands that were visible on the property. And this last slide is just providing a view of the severed lot. In addition to the deer wintering area, district has identified that there may be species at risk habitat. So the recommendation is for the required environmental impact study to confirm there are suitable building sites outside of that potential if there's any habitat. So as detailed in the staff report, planning staff are satisfied that the proposed consent conforms with the official plan and is appropriate, and would recommend approval of the application subject to the recommended conditions, which include standard conditions, as well as the preparation of an environmental impact statement to address the official plan policies related to the identified natural features, as well as conditions related to the continued use of the road allowance as requested by infrastructure, and conditions requested by the District of Muskoka. And that concludes the presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Jakanis. Mr. Cook, would you like to come up to the podium? And that's it.
Well, good morning, and thanks for taking the time and for the patience of the committee and the section that deals with it. There's been a lot of back and forth, and I thank you for the patience in detailing this to me. Yes, the overview is one of the things is that that access road that the township owns. The original road was constructed somewhere. The original road was constructed so that to avoid a high rock and pioneers could get to the next neighbor. Since 1960, when the road was aligned, somewhere in 1960, was aligned where the existing paved road is. Now, that would have been a good time to close the old road and give it or sell to the adjoining owners at a minimum cost. None of that was done. Being a town road, the town has due diligence on it and has never ever done any for the 30 years. Yearly for the last 30 years, I have kept the ditches open at a cost of $100 times 30, which is $3,000. Excuse me, $3,000. Added to that, the road surface I've looked after in there, which would include adding material and grading and so on, which is at a cost of $100 times 30, would be another $3,000. I've also maintained and cut and cleared and graveled and cut the brush and everything off that road and kept it open. So that's at another $100 times 30, which would be another $3,000. So I'm saying that over this 30-year period, in order to keep the township road open, which is a town and has due diligence, I've spent at least $9,000 on that. We are the adjoining owners, and in about 90%, 99% of this road. We believe that the road should be closed and offer at a minimum price. So doing would eliminate any liability that the town has and clear this up. I can see from, from the details, all right, the engineering and all the background is a large cost to me, all right. Since the property, there is some value in the property, the amount of these expenses seems to be prohibitive in that way. That's what I'm challenging the town to look at it basically and offer it at a decent price. For us, the road would not be a great benefit, except it would clear up once and for all the east half of that property. I humbly ask for your consider the existing facts so that we both can put this property to rest. Thanks to the town staff and your committee with patience in hearing me out. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions or comments from members of the public? Seeing none. Committee, the staff's recommendation is to approve the consent application. Do we have a motion to that effect? Or Member Watson and Member Sims? I'll now ask Adam Ager to please read that resolution.
Bear with me and wish me luck. Thank you. Moved by Member Watson, seconded by Member Sims. Be it resolved that having regard to matters prescribed under Section 5312 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, Chapter P13, that consent be granted for application number B01-2026 Cook, conditional upon the following. Items 1 and 2, which can be summarized as the proper legal registration and mapping documents and fees be submitted to the Secretary-Treasurer. 3, that cash in lieu of parkland dedication be paid to the town in the amount of 5% of the assessed value of the vacant lot in accordance with the dedication of parkland bylaw 9749. 4, an environmental impact statement be submitted to confirm the following. A, that there's a suitable building and septic and access envelopes that will not negatively impact deer wintering areas, watercourses, wetlands, and species at risk or their habitat. 5, the subject land be rezoned to A, specify that the two parcels comprising the retained lot be joined as one for planning purposes, and B, incorporate the recommendations of the environmental impact statement. 6, that the applicant will enter into a consent agreement with the town of Gravenhurst pursuant to 5126 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, to require A, a site plan agreement that identifies building, septic, and access locations and implements the recommendations of the environmental impact statement that cannot be implemented through zoning, and B, that an entrance permit be obtained for the severed lot. Condition 7, that the applicant enters into an access agreement with the town of Gravenhurst to allow for the continued use of the constructed road, or that the applicant purchase a portion of the town-owned road allowance occupied by the constructed road. 8, that the applicant provides engineered design, condition assessment, and sizing of the culvert crossing the town-owned road allowance. If it is determined that the existing culvert is not adequately sized or in disrepair, a stamped engineered design of a replacement must be provided and installed to the satisfaction of infrastructure services at all cost of the applicant, or the applicant purchase that portion of the town-owned road allowance occupied by the constructed road. Condition 9, if there isn't an existing entrance permit for the existing access to the retained lot, an entrance permit be obtained from the District of Muskoka. 10, a 3-meter road widening across the frontage of the severed and retained lands be dedicated to the District of Muskoka for road widening purposes. And lastly, 11, that the applicant shall enter into an agreement with the district pursuant to 5126 of the Planning Act RSO 1990 respecting the location of wells on the property in relation to the district road.
Thank you. That's one of our longer resolutions, I think. Okay, committee, do we have questions or comments to that? Mr. Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess to staff, how do we go about getting this closed up and sold to the rightful owners? And, I wouldn't be too hesitant to say that Mr. Cook might be in need of a refund.
Thank you, through you. So there is an application through the Planning Division to purchase a road allowance, and that's what this would be considered in this case. And there is an application fee and a set amount. The ultimately, that transfer of that road allowance is a council decision, and the application fee would need to be paid by the applicant to staff, and then Mr. Cook would have the ability to request a reduction in fees from council, but it's all a council process to close the road allowance.
Okay, so I understand that. Now, can this committee recommend that process if Mr. Cook is willing to go that route? And can the committee make recommendations on the price and what labor has gone into keeping that road allowance open for this time?
Through you. So the way that the recommended conditions were set out in the resolution, it's an either or situation. So either meeting the infrastructure comments or purchasing the road allowance. So the committee, by approving the recommended conditions, is allowing for by having the, should Mr. Cook choose to purchase that road allowance and go through that process, then the other infrastructure requirements would be null and void by having the condition worded as or. With respect to the recommendation, I don't believe that that's in the purview of the committee to be able to recommend that to council. I'm not sure if Mr. Egger has any other comments.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Member Watson, and absolutely, as Mr. Caddis has pointed out, yeah, it's not within the committee's purview to necessarily recommend any sort of reduction in fees. As Mr. Caddis pointed out, there is already kind of a set fee schedule for that process. However, during Mr. Cook's presentation through his application, he's more than welcome to, highlight, as he has today, the cost that he's put in, and that's something that's within the purview of council at that time.
Okay, Mr. Ungerman.
You, Mr. Chair. I'm wondering why the planning staff are recommending the additional expenses to be incurred by the applicant if he doesn't buy the road. The road's existing, it's a town road. Why should the applicant be forced to pay the cost of, what do we have? Engineering, design, sizing the culvert, fixing it up. I mean, if it's a town road, why isn't the town paying for it if it's needed?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. So the recommendations in the report and in the resolution that's being put forward are what was requested by the town's infrastructure department. So as with all applications, planning circulates to agencies that include internal agencies like building, infrastructure, as well as the district, Bell Canada, Hydro, et cetera. So part of what we do is request all the comments, then we compile them and bring them forward for your review. So that is the comments that were received from the town's infrastructure department. So we're bringing them forward on behalf of infrastructure.
To my fellow committee members, I don't see why it would be fair to the owner asking for a simple severance of a very large lot into 2 lots to impose upon him the costs to something which, if the town's going to continue to own this road and the town's not reasonable in making a deal with the applicant, why should the applicant also have to pay the cost to do work that the town should do to maintain the roadway? So I'm inclined to move a motion to amend. Well, I don't know if we've got a motion yet on the floor to approve the severance, but not require the applicant to incur the costs that really, I think, should fall on the town to cover if they think it's necessary. So I leave it to my other committee members to consider.
This being, thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that, and I appreciate the summary that Angela has provided. This was an either-or. And have we, just to be clear in my mind here, have we excluded the possibility of just joining the 2 and leaving the road as it is? Has that been excluded?
Thank you for that question. Again, based on the infrastructure comments, that option is excluded in the resolution. So their infrastructure, and I'll give a bit more context, their position is that this is a road, an access that's only benefiting to one person. So they're saying that's who's using it, they should upgrade it. I'm just giving that context. The way the resolution, again, just to answer your question, right now there's only 2 options: either buy the road allowance or upgrade it in accordance with the recommendations from the infrastructure department.
So the options do still exist to just join the 2 parcels, but that would then require the applicant to pay for upgrades to a road that nobody else uses.
No, I think, to be clear, this is a road allowance that, in effect, the driveway comes down. The Doe Lake Road bypasses this now. That's what happened. Originally, Doe Lake Road took that detour, if you will, and now it does not. So that portion is a town-owned road allowance that Mr. Cook's driveway, if you will, access road, passes over. So there is the option of purchasing that road allowance or a portion of the road allowance. And as Mr. Caddis has said, the fees and whatnot associated with that are part of the town's policies that council has the opportunity to deal with if that, if it were to come to that. Otherwise, there is a straightforward procedure to simply purchase the road allowance, as we sell shore road allowances or any other road allowance on a regular basis. But as of right now, that property is owned by the town, that road allowance strip. And it would seem to me, and I kind of got the feeling from Mr. Cook as well, I think that the most logical thing is to transfer the ownership of that road allowance. It then eliminates the other engineering costs and things like that, because then it's entirely on his own property. So is that, and Mr. Caddis is nodding there. Go ahead, Mr. Sims.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this brings us back to, I think, is the very pertinent question that Mr. Watson posed at the very beginning. There is a path forward to allow us to approve this consent application, as well as a reasonable path forward to allow Mr. Cook to seek some reimbursement for all this. But so that's not excluded. And so I think the question was a fabulous way to move forward, because it, and so I don't know whether we need to hear Mr. Cook's, we don't need to at this point. No. So I think we, so I also agree with Mr. Ungerman that this is the discussion that really is needed in this case.
You, Mr. Chair, I'm not certain how this committee has any control over council. Council will do whatever it wants. I mean, if we just say in our decision, we would recommend council deed the right-of-way for $1 to the applicant, council doesn't have to pay any attention to us. So I mean, we can make the point to council through our decision, but it's no control. And that doesn't mean it's going to happen.
I'd remind you that there are 2 members of council
I know,
on the
but-
committee, and I'm sure, as myself, Councillor Strength
But you're not a majority.
is listening. But that is the bottom line. The bottom line is the decision is of council. The decision, there's a process where council declares the land surplus, and then there is a process for buying it, that council deals with almost every planning council committee meeting. You'll see that there's a road allowance, usually a short road allowance, but
Okay.
there's often short, road allowance purchases. So it's a standard practice that happens. The question of the fees is, again, in the purview of council, I would suggest.
My vote will obviously indicate this, but I think this is an application that really should be approved. It's straightforward, it's simple, makes sense. So we'll see when we vote on it.
Anything further, Councillor Strength? Oh, Councillor Strength is coming in. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, committee. I'm just curious to know, is it Mr. Cook's intent to proceed with the process of obtaining the road allowance?
That would be a question for Mr. Cook. Do you want to come forward? So the question was, is that your intention to proceed with purchasing basically the road allowance?
Well, yes, the decision is, I guess, what the cost is going to be. what cost is going to be. Like, I mean, I'm very limited, you know, to what I can pay for that all for sure. And, you know, yeah, so that's the thing, all right. Yes, I would purchase, but it's got to be at a reasonable cost, and it can't be that full fee that you would purchase for a shoreline road allowance. And since I appreciate the comments of your committee here, you know, there's sympathy for my position. And so it all depends on that price, all right? But I think that's the way to go if we can possibly do it. And the towns is all finished with that. We're all clear, and away we go, and we have access. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything further, committee? Okay. And I'll just ask our senior planner, as a result of these proceedings, or do you have a recommendation or comment to bring to our attention?
Staff would recommend that committee approve the application with the recommended conditions. Thank you.
Okay, then, without anything further, I'll call for the vote on that resolution. And that carries. Thank you. Good luck, Mr. Cook. That carried. Okay. We will now deal with the application for minor variance. Oh, did I not vote on that?
Yeah, you did.
Oh, I'm still seeing it. Still seeing it. Anyway, I now declare this to be a public hearing for minor variance application A29 2025 GR for Isabel. I'll now ask the senior planner to please provide any additional information that may be relevant.
Thank you. Committee will recall this application was deferred at the January Committee of Adjustment meeting, primarily because of questions about septic and the location of structures in relation to the neighbor's property. So this application has actually been amended from that January hearing, and an amended proposal is being put forward. So this is a new hearing, and I will go through the related presentation. This property is located at the north end of the urban center boundary with frontage on Lake Muskoka. The property is designated Urban Shoreline Residential Area in the official plan and zoned Residential 2. Although this property is within the urban area, it is not an area that is serviced by municipal water and sewer. I would just point out on this map, the property is an oddly shaped lot, and I would also just confirm that the original shore road allowance has been purchased and is owned by the applicant. It's part of this property, which is not reflected on mapping. The property is accessed by a private right-of-way. This property is located in a residential waterfront area with older dwellings on lots with similar terrain and coniferous vegetation along the shoreline. And again, I would just point out the irregular lot shape. The current proposal is still to remove the existing dwelling located at an angle to the shoreline. It's colored blue under the yellow, which represents the proposed new dwelling, which also, the new dwelling includes an open deck. And according to the drawing, the proposed new dwelling on its own complies with all setbacks and lot coverage, as the residential R2 zone is the zone that's assigned to residential waterfront properties that are located within the urban center. It therefore has more permissive setback, height, and lot coverage provisions than waterfront zoning. So the first requested variance has to do with the size of the deck at the front of the dwelling, which has been reduced from the original submission heard in January, and with revised measurements with revised calculations regarding the boathouse and dock, will result in shoreline development of 173 square meters. This is on a lot where 138 square meters is permitted and 143 square meters currently exists. So it's increasing by 30 square meters with the deck. There are no longer variances being requested for the sheds and outhouse, which are all to be removed. There is a new variance request that has been identified for shoreline buffer, which will be 70.4%, where a 75% shoreline buffer is required. Comments have been received from the chief building official, who will accept the septic designer's information and tests that were provided. You'll recall at the hearing in January, there was concerns about the septic, and that was one of the reasons for the deferral. So as a result, a licensed septic installer did provide details to the satisfaction of the chief building official. The infrastructure technologist, deputy fire chief, deputy treasurer, and parks and trail technician all have no objection. The District of Muskoka was also circulated due to the proximity to the water treatment plant and the sewage treatment plant, and the district also provided comments of no objection. Letters of objection were received from neighboring property owners, all of which were provided to Committee of Adjustment members and to the applicants. Concerns expressed in the letters include the extent of the variances, potential precedent on a small lot, the increase in shoreline development, if the application is minor, parking areas during and after construction, and the request for a survey, as well as the need for a site plan agreement. So just going through the photos, and again, these were taken on a very rainy day. I apologize, but we didn't feel it was necessary to take additional photos, so they are a bit blurry in some places. But just beginning at the waterfront, this shows the existing single-story boathouse and dock, which were recently measured after the circulation was completed, and the measurements were done due to some discrepancies with numbers on past drawings. So this structure has been confirmed to be 143 square meters in footprint, and again, that already exceeds the permitted shoreline development of 138 square meters. With that said, it's less, the 173 being that's proposed is less than what was circulated for either the January meeting or for this meeting. So then just moving out to the point at the end of the lot, turning to look northeast along the shoreline, you can see the subject boathouse at the very right, the immediate neighbor's boathouse more central, and another boathouse in the distance. And really, this photo is just intended to provide an indication of the irregular shape of this lot in relation to the shoreline, which is also a factor when considering the proposed impact of the requests. And then just starting to move along the shoreline, the existing cottage is shown at the top left of the photo with a fence. It's a little lighter color. It demarcates the lot line. And then the neighbor's cottage is partially visible more in the center of the photo. So keep in mind that, again, these properties are located within the urban center and are therefore identified in the official plan as being an area with an anticipated urban scale of development as opposed to the more restrictive waterfront area designation. For example, the proposed lot coverage here will be 13.9%, where the R2 zone permits 30%, 30, meaning that the proposed open deck could actually be constructed as a covered porch as of right, but it is staff's opinion the open deck will have less visual impact. And then just moving further along the shoreline and standing directly in front of the cottage, you can see the shoreline buffer in this location. The proposed deck would begin basically at the same setback that the existing cottage is. At the bottom left of the photo, you can also see the pump house, which has been included in shoreline development, but is not used for this cottage. It is used by a neighbor. And just in this shoreline buffer area, although it does contain vegetation, the proximity of the existing and proposed dwelling to the water means that the required 75% shoreline buffer cannot be met. As compensation, staff are therefore seeking additional vegetation through a site plan agreement. This is walking behind the cottage. You can see the outhouse at the left, which is to be removed, the neighbor's cottage to the upper right, and part of the septic on the right as well. And this is where the new septic will be located. And then just looking up the driveway, the woodshed, shed, and outhouse that are to be removed. So there are no longer any requested variances related to those structures. And the last slide is just turning and looking northeast towards the other neighbor's property. As detailed in the staff report, planning staff are recommending approval of the application for 173 square meters of shoreline development, as shown in this drawing, and which is less than what was circulated. And for that to be subject to a site plan agreement requiring additional vegetation within the shoreline buffer. And that concludes the presentation.
Thank you. Do the applicant or agent have a presentation they wish to make? Please come forward.
Good morning. When we met 2 months ago, there was...
Sorry, could we get your name?
Oh, I'm sorry, Rob Isabel.
Thank you, Rob.
Sorry, I'm not familiar with the procedures. I was only in court once. I was 15 years old as a teenager, did something stupid. Rob Isabel, reside currently in Toronto, 3213 33 Harbour Square. And our plan is just the stage in our life now that we're decided to nearly retire, and we're looking at building a small place on Lake Muskoka. When we met a couple months ago, I believe there was 3 suggestions by the committee. Thank you. One of them was to hire a professional. I believe that was Mr. Watson's recommendation, which we should have done probably 6 months ago. We would have saved a couple of months. So Bobby was in the room. We spoke to Bobby. Great person to work with. So suggestion number 1 was to use a professional, which we did. Concern number 2 was with septic. We hired a local contractor, and he came and he did some digging to find out the type of soil condition, and based on the soil condition, prepared a particular design and sent this information to Bobby, which we added. Issue number 3, I believe, was parking. And the only way we could address that was by removing all 3 sheds. So the shed is gone, the outhouse is gone, and the woodshed is gone. And so really, that's the 3 comments or recommendation we had from your group at that particular time. One sort of not relevant, but irrelevant, I guess relevant in some ways. We're sort of in a bit of a weird economic time. But we also like to make a point. I grew up in a small town, Northern Ontario, Kapuskasing, middle of nowhere, where it was actually quite important to use local vendors. And it's definitely our plan at this point to use local vendors. Chamberlain is 2 kilometers from our place. We've used on a regular basis, talking to local contractors, meeting some masonry guy, local person. Septic guy is going to be a local person. So our plan is to do that. Again, growing up with this particular environment where it's important to support local stores and businesses, and it's our intent to do that. So, but thank you. So.
Thank you. I have to flip my page here. Any questions or comments from members of the public? Seeing none. Okay, committee, the staff's recommendation is to approve this minor variance application. We have a motion to that effect? Okay, Watson and Ungerman. And I'll ask Mr. Ager to please read the resolution.
Moved by Member Watson, seconded by Member Ungerman. Be it resolved that application number A29, 2025 GR Isabel amended be approved for 173 square meters of shoreline development and 70.4% shoreline buffer, subject to the following condition: a site plan agreement be entered into requiring additional planting within the shoreline buffer.
Thank you. Committee, questions or comments? Mr. Watson, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question would be to staff. A number of letters received from local residents were in regards to surveys and measurements. I want to make sure that we are comfortable before we go ahead with this, that the measurements and the information that you have will be accurate. And then when the building permit is applied for, that the information then is accurate to that as well.
Thank you for that. The drawing is based on a partial survey from 2004, which does in fact show the dwelling. And one of the reasons for the discrepancies in the measurements with the boathouse is that survey had showed or had included another structure that's no longer there. So that's why there was some discrepancies in measurements. With that said, if committee, it's certainly within the committee's mandate to require a survey as a condition. That's something that the committee can do if you so choose.
Mr. Sims?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And to follow up on Mr. Watson's concerns, which I share, this is the letters from the neighboring property owners, I think had some validity, and so I do agree that we need to think carefully about it, whether they can be incorporated or addressed in some manner. I mean, there's some really positive things here from my standpoint. The notion of putting a new dwelling is very positive and will allow more people to come and enjoy the place. The fact that there's a new septic system being installed is clearly an improvement on all things. The lot coverage, exceeding lot coverage metrics is a concern. I think the parking is a concern. And the lack of a detailed surveys, those, as Mr. Watson has said, were some of the concerns raised by the public. And they, to my mind, they do have some validity. If we just look back a few minutes to the previous application we were looking at, I think the detailed survey plan that was provided, which had all the adaptations put onto it, would represent best practices. And we all appreciated that, and it was really helpful. So are we really going to be sitting here and saying, well, maybe not best practices here, this is second best practices or inadequate practices? And so I think I would prefer to have all this done properly with a survey myself. So there's upsides, but I think there's still concerns in my mind.
Okay, and any further comments or questions?
Well, just thank you for reminding me, Mr. Chair, that I think one of the last comments that Ms. Giacata said was that it is in our purview to require a formal survey to be incorporated, which would address one of them and might even help resolve what this concern about parking. That would deal with all three.
You go ahead.
Chair. And yes, but I'm comfortable if those measures are put into place by staff as we go forward. And as Mr. Geddes said, that those measurements and all of the surveys and things will be put in as building permits come in and all that. I don't need to see it today. I don't need to see it written down as long, I'm comfortable knowing that everything is going to be subject to the questions that we receive from the neighboring property owners. So I am comfortable with that, Mr. Geddes.
Thank you. Just to be clear, a survey wouldn't be required unless it's deemed to be necessary by the chief building official. So if committee does want a survey, then it would be important to include it as part of the recommended conditions today.
Thank you. I was just going to suggest that, given the, rather narrow parameters of, that we've got to work with on this lot, that, at some point, it would be up to the building department to make sure that those setbacks have been met, I guess, is the issue. And I mean, Ms. Jakatis said there was a survey, I think, back in 2004. Well, so the lot hasn't changed. So that survey does outline what the boundaries are. I think the only issue is the potential setbacks of the new building that might be an issue. And that would be up to Mr. Isabel, I guess, to confirm that those setbacks, in terms of the building department, have been met. Did you want to comment on that, Mr. Isabel?
Yes, if a survey is needed, according to the building department, we'll provide a survey. We have no issues there. But just to remind, there's a number of steel pins on the lots that we have right now at various locations. And I suspect that these pins have not moved and the buildings have not moved. So cost of survey, if it's required, we'll do it. But there's also a fair amount of fees involved in doing that. But if there's a need to walk with the town to verify these pins, we have absolutely no problem. We're going to do whatever that's required by various parties to make this happen. So we're not concerned, again, because of surveyors will come back and say, yes, the pin is there and it hasn't moved. But if that's necessary from your end, we'll make it happen. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm just aware of certain building sites where, a surveyor comes in just to locate the corners or something of a building. That's often useful just to ensure that those setbacks are being met. But I think we can leave that, frankly, to the building department to ascertain that the setbacks are correct through whatever means they choose to use. But I think that, if it's clear where the boundaries are, as Mr. Isabel's suggesting there are pins right now, then it's simply a measurement. Are we good with that? Okay. Okay. I'll now ask the planner if there's any recommendations or comments to bring to the attention of the committee as a result of these proceedings.
Thank you. Staff would recommend that committee approve the application as was read with the 173 square meters of shoreline development, subject to the recommended condition.
Okay, so we will call for the vote on that. And that carries, thank you. And I now declare this public hearing to be concluded. Moving on, sorry, I now declare this to be a public hearing for minor variance application A06-2026 for NTAB. I will now ask the planner, Andrew Clark, to please provide any additional information that may be relevant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, everybody. The subject property, which is municipally known as 1029 McCormick Road, is located in the southwestern area of the town, more specifically on the north side of Sparrow Lake. The property is a waterfront lot with assessed frontage on Sparrow Lake and is accessed from McCormick Road, which is municipally maintained. It is zoned residential waterfront RW6 and is within the waterfront area designation of the official plan. The property is within a residential waterfront area, which does consist of smaller lots, generally speaking, that are developed with detached dwellings and accessory structures with varying setbacks from the water. A vacant back lot that is well vegetated also exists to the north. The property is currently in the process of being constructed with a new dwelling in its central area, which is not yet shown on this aerial map, but is in the same general location. The property also includes an existing shoreline storage building and a dock, and that shoreline storage building is in the southeast corner in this area and is planned to be removed. The property is relatively flat. It does contain a steep slope in the shoreline area, which then flattens out moving towards the water. And you can note on this aerial image that the property is relatively cleared in its central area, but it does contain mature trees along the side lot lines. Finally, it's worth noting that a portion of the Sparrow Lake provincially significant wetland is identified on the shoreline abutting the property in this general location. The applicant's proposing to construct a new front deck and a paved driveway, as well as recognizing a small portion of a rear porch, which is currently being constructed. The application proposes to permit a maximum lot coverage of 15.9% for the lot area within 60 meters of the shoreline, where 13% is permitted, representing a variance of 2.9%. To permit a maximum lot coverage of 14.2% for the total lot area, where again 13% is permitted, representing a variance of 1.2%, and to permit a minimum setback of 0 meters for a parking space from the street line, where 3 meters is required, which represents a variance of 3 meters. And just for context, that parking space is over at the rear to the northeast of the property. Comments of no objection were received from the chief building official, manager of revenue, parks and trails technician, the fire and emergency services department, as well as the infrastructure technologist, subject to the applicant removing the proposed encroaching parking area shown on the road allowance, which is currently shown on the approved site plan agreement for the property, and also subject to them obtaining an entrance permit for the proposed driveway that's to be paved. So staff have included a condition of approval for the site plan agreement for the property to be amended, which shows the parking area removed that encroaches on the road allowance, and also to require an entrance permit. It's worth noting the applicant has already provided us with an updated plan, which shows that parking area that was encroaching removing, and that's partly why a 0 meter setback is requested for a parking space in this proposal. So moving into our photos of the site, this first photo looks south towards the rear of the dwelling from the driveway entrance. A small portion of the porch, which is shown in the middle area of the dwelling, is included in the additional requested lot coverage, and that's because it was originally intended to be just dedicated to a roof overhang, which is exempt from lot coverage, but further review indicated that there's some decking under it, so we included it in this application. Turning around and looking east, this shows the location of the proposed paved parking space along the rear lot line. You can see the rear lot line is kind of delineated with orange markings ahead. You can also see McCormick Road on the left-hand side there. Moving further north and looking in the same direction, this just shows a better view of the distance between the traveled road and the rear lot line. Where the parking space is proposed. You can note that there's a boulevard space there that separates them. And based on the drawing submitted by the applicant, that distance is about 6 meters. So moving south now, still looking east, I just want to note the existing well on the property. You can see that there's a pylon covering it. That location of the well appears to limit the ability to park further into the property as well. This just looks west across the rear property line. You can note an existing gravel parking area at the rear, as well as the neighboring dwelling and some of the trees along the side lot line. Now, moving south, this is a view of the front of the building. This is the location where the new deck is being proposed. As you can see, it's already been flattened and cleared. It's worth noting that this deck it's approximately 27 meters from the shoreline, and it counts towards lot coverage as a result. A deck of this size could be built as of right if it was within 20 meters of the water, because it would not count towards lot coverage, but rather shoreline development area. And then just turning around, facing south towards the shoreline area, you can see that this area is quite open but modestly developed. You see the shoreline storage building on the left, which is proposed to be removed and revegetated. You can see a portion of the dock in the background as well. The Sparrow Lake wetland is within the background. We can't see it in this image because the lake's frozen over. Although the applicant, it's worth noting, has also provided an environmental impact study, which has determined that negative impacts are not expected from the proposed development to this feature and other potential natural heritage features on the property, and has a series of mitigation measures which are proposed to be implemented through the amending site plan agreement, which includes more revegetation within the shoreline area. So as outlined in the staff report, staff are satisfied that the application meets the 4 required tests of a minor variance and recommend the application be approved, subject to conditions that the proposed lot coverage is limited to accessory buildings, and that the existing site plan agreement is amended again to remove the parking encroachments, require an entrance permit for the new driveway, and implement the recommendations of the scoped environmental impact study, which do include revegetating the shoreline area. And that concludes staff's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I'll ask for comments from the agent, Melissa Markham, who has pre-registered to address the committee electronically.
Good morning, Chair, members of the committee. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. My name is Melissa Markham Planning Consultants, 1025 Rebecca Lane, Huntsville, Ontario, P1H 2J6. I'm here today on behalf of the owners of the property known as 1029 McCormick Road. I believe that staff have provided a thorough overview of the application, and we do thank them for working with us on this application. As you've heard, the application seeks relief for lot coverage within 60 meters of the shoreline, total lot coverage, and also to reduce the setback of a proposed parking area. We pre-consulted with staff regarding the application. We have read the staff report that's proposed for today's meeting and are in agreement with the recommendations as provided in the staff report. I'm not going to go over all the things that staff have covered. I think they've done a thorough job, including some of those photos. As noted by staff, an environmental impact study was provided with the application, and it does demonstrate that the proposed deck will be 30 meters from that provincially significant wetland. As per staff, we believe that the application meets the 4 tests of a minor variance, and I'm here to answer any additional questions that the committee may have on the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Please remain in the meeting in case we have any questions for you. And the applicant themselves are not here. Any questions or comments from the public? There's only one member of the public. Seeing none. So staff, the recommendation is to approve the minor variance. Do we have a motion to that effect? Or Mr. Sims and Mr. Watson? And I'll ask Mr. Agut to please read that resolution.
Moved by member Sims, seconded by member Watson. Be it resolved that application number A06, 2026, and to be approved, and that the necessary notice of decision be prepared conditional upon the proposed additional lot coverage being limited to accessory structures, and the existing site plan agreement be amended to remove the parking encroachment shown on the road allowance, to require an entrance permit approval for the proposed driveway, to require revegetation in the shoreline area, and to implement the recommendations of the scoped environmental impact study prepared by SLR Consulting on January 28, 2026.
Thank you. Any questions or comments, committee? Mr. Sims?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of questions. New entrance, it's got to do with the entrance and the parking. A new entrance permit, I guess, does this mean that this is a brand new, the first time any building was put on this lot? And then I'll follow up on parking in a moment if I can.
Mr. Clark, are you aware, can you answer that question?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. The requirement for that entrance permit came from a review from our Infrastructure Services Department, who administers those applications. And depending on their review of those features, they may request that a new permit is granted for a property, or based on the existing situation, if they've got records of a permit from before, or what's proposed. In this case, this is a very old, long-standing property, as is some of the surrounding area, that has kind of an existing gravel parking area and driveway. It's my understanding there wasn't a formal record of an entrance permit, and the fact that there was some new paving proposed, I think, is what prompted that request to recognize that specific work through that permit, so that the Infrastructure Services Department can make sure that the area that's paved on the road allowance is appropriate, and that if any other encroachments are there, that those would be removed. So when we visited the site, it was still gravel, but the entrance permit's really to make sure that that paving is done appropriately and to standards of, current standards for entrances.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I could just follow up, the conditions don't actually mention the zero meter setback for the parking area, and it does look like the latest plan has. I'm just going back to the latest plan here. I mean, the driveway goes right out to the road, so that's not a setback. We're not concerned about that. But does that mean then that that area is a parking area? Why are we discussing 0 meter setbacks when in fact there's the setback, the portion of the parking area which is immediately adjacent to the existing well is the 3 meter setback. So where is there a 0 meter setback in parking?
Mr. Clark?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. I think it would be helpful to bring the site plan back up to show that. For some background context, parking areas, spaces, they are regulated specifically in the zoning bylaw and are viewed differently than a driveway entrance. And they're supposed to be sized to a standard to allow, an appropriate vehicle size. And they also have setback requirements. So when we were reviewing this plan, there was parking spaces that were delineated. They're not shown on the updated plan specifically, but usually you'd see them as like a box that it's about 2.5 meters wide by 5.5 meters long. The original plan, which is also shown on the site plan agreement on the property, showed 4 parking spaces, 2 here, 2 here. And so when our infrastructure department reviewed that, they weren't supportive of putting those parking spaces on the road allowance, so they requested that to be removed. And the proposal was updated to recognize 2 spaces in this location. You would think of the closest one to the rear lot line, the parking space technically ending where the rear lot line is, and then another parking space being provided beside that. So we're kind of looking at relief. We thought it was best to include it in the application relief, as we didn't have clear records of where the parking spaces have been approved before on the property. It is a requirement that any designated parking space is 3 meters from the lot line that abuts the street. So that's kind of how it came to be asked for in this application. But the intention is kind of to take any existing parking that might be incurring in the gravel area off the road allowance and limit it to the property now. Hopefully that provides some clarity.
That's clear, that you answered it perfectly, or for my understanding. Thank you. And it was probably my misunderstanding that led to this in the first place. So my apologies for drawing this out. But it was, I mistook the I think it's a red, it's a red dashed line as, which is the, what's it labeled as? Edge of pavement. So that's the traveled portion of the road. And then immediately to the right of that, and sort of, or well, however many meters to the right, that's the property line. So if that's the case, then yes, I see the 0 meters. So I got you.
The property line is always the darkened line.
Yeah. That, we're good. That was my misunderstanding, my misreading of the drawing.
Okay, anything further, committee? We're good? And I'll just ask the planner if there's any recommendations or comments to bring to our attention as a result of these proceedings.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, staff recommend the application be approved with the recommended conditions.
Thank you. So we will call for the vote on this item. And that carries. And I now declare this public hearing to be concluded. Okay, committee, the next Committee of Adjustment meeting is on April 17th, and it's likely I may not be able to attend, so Member Strength will be in the chair. I'll be away, but I will try to attend if I can. And if there are any other members who are unable to attend, can you please let our Secretary Treasurer Susan know? So she can confirm that there will be a quorum, and as there is no further business noted, can I have a motion to adjourn? Member Watson and Member Ungerman. Do we have to vote on that? Yep. We vote on that. There we go. Vote for, I should know by now, shouldn't I? It's okay. It carries anyway. Sometimes you hit the button and it doesn't hit. Okay, so I now declare this hearing to be concluded at 10:17. Thank you. Please remain here to sign the document.